Today I'm here with Lisa Nadon, a licensed paralegal with Small Matters, and she is going to be answering us a few questions. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks for having me, Victoria.
My first question, I guess, would be for all the people out there that want to be landlords. What things would be important for them to know as a residential landlord?
Great question. Probably the largest thing to know is that there is a governing body called the Landlord and Tenant Board that governs all residential tenancies within Ontario. So familiarize yourself with the Act, go to their website, and just learn a little bit about what it is to be a landlord.
Well, I guess another question would be, let's say somebody's buying a property that's already having tenants or intends to buy a property, what they should be aware of?
Yeah, tenanted properties. Those are really good questions. One of the main things to remember with tenanted properties is get the information. Because if you're purchasing a property that is already tenanted, you need to know, is there a lease agreement in place? What does that lease say? What does it have utilities included? What is the rent owing? Who are these people that are in the home? So big step with tenanted properties, make sure you get the lease information, or at least something called a tenant acknowledgement form that explains who they are, how much the rent is, and what is included within their rental.
Okay, let's say I want to buy this property. I do have tenants. I mean, they are in the property right now, but I would like to change the tenants. Would I be able to do such?
Right, great question. So if you're buying a tenanted property as an investment, you are taking on those tenants. You don't have the ability to remove those tenants to put in tenants that you would rather have. Another thing that's really important is to understand that when that deal closes on a tenanted property, you as the new landlord or successor landlord takes on all issues. So if there were issues before, i.e. the tenant had maintenance issues with the previous landlord, they are now your responsibility to address. So it goes back to remembering to ask those questions when you're looking at these places. Get a lease agreement in place. Do you have issues with the landlord right now, and what are they? So hopefully they can be rectified before you close that deal.
Okay. I think another question people might have is, do I have any responsibilities? I found the renter, or the renter is existing already. Now, for the term of tenancy, do I have any responsibilities at all as a landlord?
Yeah, as a landlord, you do have a lot of responsibility. So let's just start from the very beginning. You want to put a tenant into your property, so you want to be able to do your due diligence, do those credit checks, get those applications filled out, completed, and make those calls. Just because they filled them out, your obligation doesn't end there. Your obligation ends when you have done what is considered your due diligence. So make those calls, ask those questions. Even getting that rental application from a tenant or a prospective tenant, they're going to be transparent with you. Well, you can do a credit check, but I still have a student loan, and you're going to get that rapport with them right off the bat. Good credit, bad credit does not make a good or bad tenant necessarily. It's getting the information and being transparent with each other, and just being honest. So that would be step one, get those applications done, have a conversation with these prospective tenants, and then moving forward, you have a duty and an obligation to maintain that unit for those tenants. It's not the tenant's responsibility to come to you every time there's a repair issue or something going on. Yes, they should be advising you when there's something, but remember, a tenant's idea of what needs to be repaired may be different than yours, and this is your investment, and your investment requires you to ensure that you're doing it the way you want it done. So do the inspections yearly, bi-yearly. Go in, make sure everything's great, have a conversation with your tenants, So those obligations are also your responsibility. And you're also responsible to ensure the safety of your tenants. So you need to ensure your smoke detectors are done yearly. That's your responsibility. It's not enough for you just to drop some batteries at the door and assume that your tenants are going to replace those batteries. A lot of tenants are great. They are going to keep your unit great. They're going to do those things. They're going to change the batteries. Most of the time that is going to happen, but it doesn't need to fall on them. So you go in, you do your inspections, do your credit checks, talk to your tenants, make sure your unit is safe. Again, things to look at would be Landlord and Tenant Board website is one. Also, property standards. That explains what is required for keeping a unit or property safe. Okay, learn those rules, learn what's expected.
Another question, you mentioned about the credit check. Now, would you recommend that people do their own credit check, or they ask of the potential tenant to provide it to them?
Great question. Please always do everything yourself, okay? It goes to even having, the tenant say, hey, I can do those repairs for you. My advice to a landlord is always ensure it's third party. It just keeps everybody hands off and clear of what their expectations are. Do your own credit checks. From what I'm hearing through the community right now, there are some very good hacked credit checks and credit applications coming through. So to ensure that everything is transparent, just do it yourself, get a third-party person.
How would you do that?
Yeah, so there are a number of ways to do that. You can get through a credit check company. You can call myself or other licensees who can do credit checks through various services that they have. TransUnion, Equifax also have the ability to do credit checks. Check on the website. If you do credit check reporting or credit check services, they're going to come up on a website for you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now you're a tenant. Do you have any responsibilities towards the landlord, towards the property you're renting? Is there anything that you have to do, comes with the tenancy?
Yeah, so as a tenant, you too also have responsibilities. It is your responsibility to ensure that unit is clean and kept up to a good state. It's your responsibility to pay your rent on time. Okay? It's your responsibility to get the rent to the landlord on time. It's not the landlord's responsibility to come to you and to go after you to keep, where's the rent? Is it coming today? That's your responsibility and your job to ensure that that rent gets to the landlord. It's also your responsibility to inform the landlord when there are issues that do occur within the rental unit. Maybe it's a pest control issue. Maybe it's a small leak issue. You may be very good at fixing things up, but it's still not your investment. So while it may be okay to change a washer in a kitchen sink or something like that, larger repairs should be brought to the attention of the landlord and addressed appropriately.
For all the tenants and landlords out there, is any specific form that people need to use when they sign a rental agreement that's the same for everybody?
Yeah, so Ministry of Housing has come up with a standardized lease agreement. It's a 13, 14-page agreement that all landlords and tenants should be using when they're entering a tenancy. This document is standardized, obviously, and what it does is the first 7 pages explain who the landlord is, who the tenant is, what is the place that you're renting, how much is the rent, what is included in that rent, are utilities included, are they separate, do you require insurance and those kinds of things. And the next 7 pages are information about certain obligations or certain parts of the act that everybody should be familiar with. So it's a great all-encompassing document, and it should and is supposed to be required for every tenancy.
Great. Now, I guess another question that is more to your field and where people might need help. There are many cases where either the tenant or the landlord needs help because of different issues that arise and we have so many forms out there. It's like a labyrinth that people have a hard time to know which form they should use for this or for that. Would you just touch base on N9, N11, N15, just so people understand what are those numbers, what are those letters for?
Yeah, so there are, the Landlord and Tenant Board governs all residential tenancies in Ontario. So anything that is dealing with a residential tenant goes through the Landlord and Tenant Board. Within that, there are various notices and applications. Notices are essentially landlord notices. Most common ones would be an N4, rent arrears notice. Next one would be an N8, persistently late. Rent is due on the 1st of each month. If you're late, that can get a notice that ends up coming out that could evict you down the road. Another notice that is coming about quite frequently is what's called an N12 notice, and that notice is whether the landlord is going to move in or the new purchaser is going to move in. Again, it's a Landlord and Tenant Board notice, so it is on a prescribed form. The next one would be a rent increase notice. So there are two numbers in a rent increase notice. One is an N1 notice, meaning your rent can only increase as per the guideline. So the Landlord and Tenant Board will bring out a percentage of when rent is to increase and how much. The other one is an N2 notice. So that means that that particular unit is exempt from this Landlord and Tenant Board rent increase guideline. Okay, and it means that it can be raised to whatever you want. Two separate notices, again, must be on a Landlord and Tenant Board prescribed form for those. The next would be tenant. Let's say tenants have some issues. Most of their issues run through a tenant application process. There's no notice before that process. So if you have questions, again, go to the Landlord and Tenant Board website. There are phone numbers you can contact the Landlord and Tenant Board. You can get your own independent legal advice if you have some concerns on either side, landlord or tenant.
I think another question that I have, you mentioned about N2. What would be those exceptions? Like any new builds or something? Or?
Yeah, so an N2, a rent increase that is not governed by the rental guidelines, are new builds, meaning anything built after November 15th, 2018, does not get governed by the Landlord and Tenant Board guideline, which means the landlord can increase your rent once per year to anything they want.
Okay.
So there's no limitation on that. What is important about that is it's a new build. So if you had a single family home and you've turned the basement into a duplex and you have city documents to say occupancy commences after November 15th, 2018, that is essentially a new build, meaning it's not a part of the guideline increase with the Landlord and Tenant Board. This date is as of right now. Usually as political parties change, some rules change. So always make sure you go back to the Landlord and Tenant Board website to make sure that you are accurate and you are falling within whatever guidelines those are at the time.
Well, that's really good to know as a tenant, so you don't get a larger rent increase when it's not necessary, or the other way around.
Yeah.
If you guys have any other questions, just feel free to get in touch with us and be happy to answer.